Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into preparation at the college level. My guest today is Phil Black. He is the founder of PrepWell Academy, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anthony. Great to be here.
So, Phil, usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to college in New Haven, Yale University.
All right, great. So let's just go back in time. Go into high school first. When did you start thinking about going to college? Was it freshman year, senior year? When did it all begin for you?
I think for me, it started about sophomore year. My sister, who was 2 years ahead of me, was starting to go through the admissions process and visiting campuses and with my parents, and I would have them come home and I would listen to them debating about this college or that college while I was in my room falling asleep. So I was excited about it. It seemed fun and something that, I didn't quite know what was happening, but I was listening to these conversations, got interested in it. And then I was an athlete. I played basketball in college. I'm a taller guy. I'm 6'7".
Wow.
And I realized that by playing a sport and getting recruited, it might be an option to get into a college that you might not otherwise get into. And I really started getting into mode of how do I become a Division I athlete? And really between my sophomore and junior year, I really started turning on the gas with going to camps and getting myself physically fit and starting the recruiting process.
Gotcha. So you go to Yale University. How is it like? What'd you do? Tell us a little bit about Yale University.
Yeah, it was a great experience. It was an eye-opening experience. I showed up on campus and it seemed like I was out of place. I come from a public high school, and I would be up in my dorm room looking out the window, and I'd look out on the courtyard and on the grassy campus area, and it seemed like everybody else belonged there. They were playing frisbee, they had Birkenstocks on, they seemed like they had been there before, and I was up in my room huddling, not sure that I had found the right place. But thankfully, I had this affinity group of basketball players. There were 4 of us who got recruited that year. So we would gather together and go play basketball. That's what we knew. That's what we loved. And it made the transition into college a lot better. I also got an eye-opener that the competition going from high school to a Division I athlete, albeit the Ivy League is not what you would consider a Duke or Kansas or one of these elite high-level Division I schools, but even years ago, it was still a pretty good high level of basketball. So I did not have an illustrious career. I got injured periodically, and I never really got my physical body in shape enough, or just haven't recovered from injuries enough to really get it going. So I mean, I played for 4 years, but I wasn't a starter. I didn't have a major impact, but of course I did make major friendships on the team. Given that when you play a Division I sport, you're around each other a lot. Mm-hmm. You get to know each other very well. And to this day, I'm still great friends with all the guys that are on my team, both in the classes above me and the class below me. So all around, it was a great experience, great academics. I was in a fraternity. A lot of my time was taken up with basketball. That was part of my identity. And then I ultimately, graduated and ended up taking a job on Wall Street.
So that's my next question. So you graduate from Yale University. How does one go from graduating from Yale to becoming the founder of PrepWell Academy?
Yeah, it was a winding road, Anthony. I have to tell you, it was not particularly difficult leaving Yale and going onto Wall Street because there was a pathway. Goldman Sachs, who the company that I got hired by, they came to campus. They liked athletes because they liked the idea of somebody who had a lot of teamwork and was able to manage their time and just had that type of background. So I interviewed, very rigorous interviewing process. We had my basketball team had a long history of people going to Wall Street. Wow. From our team. So there was a lot of other people who were encouraging us and advising us. So I got a job with Goldman Sachs, which is a big investment bank in New York, in Manhattan. At the time, I think there were only 2,500 employees. It was a private company. Now it probably has 35,000 employees because it's a public company now.
Yeah.
Had a great experience there. I wouldn't say it was a great fit for me, given that I'm not necessarily a big numbers person and a markets guy, but it was exciting. My friends were doing it. It was one of these 100-hour work week jobs. And made money, made pretty good money. And it was just, there was a big vibe that I really liked, being very interested and engaged in the work. But about 2.5 years into it, I had to make a decision. Do I want to go to business school? Do I want to continue with Goldman Sachs? They were asking me if I wanted to come back as an associate. And I had a moment, Anthony, where I had worked for 18 months in a row without one day off.
Wow.
And I was getting out of shape. I was getting overweight. This was new to me because I had always been an athlete. So that was throwing me off my game. And day 181, when my business mates who I worked with at Goldman, they said, "Hey, you've finally taken a day off. Let's go skiing." So I said, "Oh, I'm not much of a skier. I'm always in the basketball season. That really wasn't my thing, but I guess I'll go. I'll try it out." So lo and behold, my first run down the slope in the skis, I fall down and I blow out my shoulder.
Oh,
So now I have to go back and I have to get shoulder surgery. And then I'm going back to Goldman Sachs with this sling. I'm coming up on the end of my analyst time and walking home from work one night. I forget the exact date, but I was walking home. It was about 3 in the morning, which was pretty typical. And I had my sling on. I had my briefcase in my hand. And I would walk to and from work. I lived in Battery Park City in downtown Manhattan, so I would walk to work, to and from work every day. And I stopped on the corner of Liberty and Wall Street, and I looked up, and it happened to be a brilliant night sky and stars everywhere. And I basically said to myself, "Is this where I'm going? Is this the best that I can be?" And I had the sling, and my arm was throbbing, and I just was not in a great place. And I said, "Not really." And then I challenged myself with this question that rings in my head, which is, if I could do anything in the world, what would I do and what would I be? And the answer at that moment when I opened my mind was very clear. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL.
wow.
And it's a pretty sharp contrast given the story that I've painted so far. But I had grown up near the water. I had grown up with some military in my family. I loved the energy. I loved the sense of duty and service and wanted to serve my country. And from that day forward, I just decided that was what I was going to do. And it was a difficult process. Most people have probably heard about the Navy SEALs and seen on TV, some of the Hell Week and how difficult some of the training is. And I was able to manage and get through that and ended up becoming a Navy SEAL officer and staying in the Navy for about 6 years.
Wow. Fantastic. And then from there, where did you go?
From there, that was what we call the dry years. This was pre 9/11. So as an officer, I started to get to the end of my operational career, as we might say. And I started looking over the horizon. I was engaged with my wife, who also went to Yale, and I wanted to get out of the military. I wanted to start, look into something else. So I ended up going to business school because I wanted to somehow smooth the transition from a very severe work experience and work life in the Navy SEALs to getting back into the private sector. So I went to Harvard Business School for 2 years. It's a 2-year MBA program, and fantastic experience again, made great friendships, learned a lot. And then 9/11 happened, which was, as everybody in our era knows, was a pretty life-altering experience.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, do I go back to the SEAL teams? Am I going to be recalled into the SEAL teams? I'm graduating from business school. I have business school debt. The economy's in shambles. What am I going to do? My wife then tells me that she's pregnant with twins.
Oh,
We had been married for a few years at the time, so that threw a wrench into the system. So I decided that I was going to leave it in the hands of the man upstairs and say, "Hey, if I get recalled, I get recalled, but I'm not going to voluntarily go back and leave my wife for 4 to 5 years, whatever it might be." So I ended up not getting recalled. It took a few years to really get everything back up and running in terms of the special operations. So I ended up going back to Goldman Sachs during this tumultuous time in the economy because I was a known entity. They knew who I was. They were inviting me back, and I had these twins. I had to support them, and I decided to go back in a slightly different role at Goldman Sachs. And I only lasted about 6 months. And I was taking a motorcycle to work. I was working out at 4 in the morning just in case I had gotten recalled, and I was trying to stay in shape. And my wife just asked me, I remember it as it was yesterday. She said, "Hey, if you're not happy in this job, you need to do something else. I want you to have some soul back in your eyes." So I said, "Wow, if you're willing to allow me to leave this job where I was making a lot of money, and we lived in the marina in San Francisco, and we had the Volvo station wagon, and what more could you want? I said, if you're willing to do that, let's hit the nuclear button. Let's move down to where we want to actually live. We were in San Francisco, but we actually wanted to live in San Diego. And we moved down here to San Diego and basically started over. We didn't have a job. We didn't have anywhere to live. And we found a little apartment and started over. I started doing some fitness consulting and decided to become a firefighter, which was another sharp turn of events. You know, not that many people who go to Yale and go to Harvard wind up being a firefighter, but to me, it allowed me to give that service that I love, that the duty to community, and it allowed me a flexible schedule to be around with the kids because I'm a big family guy. And within about a year and a half, I quickly realized that it's pretty expensive to live in San Diego. We had a few more kids by then. We now have 4 kids.
Wow.
And I decided that I needed to make more money somehow. I couldn't figure out this 9-day-a-month firefighting job making money, but I had to support this whole family. So I ended up starting a fitness business called FitDeck, which stands for Fitness Exercise Playing Cards, or a Fit Deck, Fitness Deck. And I started building that business. The deck of cards had pictures of fitness exercises on them that you would shuffle up to create your own workout. And I built that with my wife for 6 or 7 years out of our garage. We got some pretty good publicity. We had done pretty well sales just for a husband and wife team out of our garage. I think over 5 or 6 years, we made over $5 million in revenue, top line revenue. And we got an opportunity to go on Shark Tank, which was a fantastic experience. I went on the show. I did not get a deal on the show, but within 3 months, I ended up having a lot of people who were interested in the business. Although the sharks didn't like the idea as an investment for them, there were other people who had other businesses going on that they thought was going to be a good match. So pretty quickly after that, I sold the business, the FitDeck business, and then I had some more time on my hands. I started looking around for other things to do and what really interested me, and I ended up creating what I do now, as well as a firefighter. I continue to be a firefighter, but the new business that I started is called PrepWell Academy, and that grew out of the angst that I saw with the parents on the sidelines of these sporting events that I would go with my children. And although at the time they were pretty young, they were in 5th and 6th and 7th grade, but I heard the high school parents just agonizing on the bleachers about how so-and-so couldn't get into UCLA with a 4.8 GPA and how such and such SAT didn't even get them into a state school. And somehow I got drawn into the conversation because they said, hey, Phil, you're the guy that went to Yale and Harvard, right? Well, what's happening with college admissions? How come the kids that seem very qualified, how come it's so difficult to get into these competitive schools and athletics, and how does it all work? And I frankly didn't really know that much because I had been out of the loop for a while, but I was of course intrigued by it. I then balanced that against what I actually was passionate about and what I thought my superpower was. And at the time, as I thought about it, Anthony, it's a weird superpower, but one of the things that I happen to do well as somebody who's not the smartest guy in the room or the greatest athlete in the world, I somehow found a way to have success getting into extremely selective programs, whether it was Yale, whether it was being a Division I athlete or working for Goldman Sachs or going to Harvard Business School or becoming a Navy SEAL or getting onto Shark Tank. These are like single-digit percentages of ever getting into those and even getting a chance to do any of those things. So I've somehow strung together 5 or 6 of those in a row. And I said, wow, maybe I can take all the lessons that I learned for those 20 years of figuring out how to do this and apply that to the very competitive and selective process of college admissions. And boy, won't that help my young kids who are coming up the ranks. And in the meantime, I can help other kids. And that's how PrepWell Academy was born about 5 years ago.
So now PrepWell Academy, give me a sense of what exactly you're doing for these students.
Yeah, this is a national program, and it's an online program. I like to call it a mentoring program. And one of the things that distinguish what I do from other college admissions counselors per se is that I like to start with kids early. And by early, I mean 9th grade. Typically in the college admissions process, things get pushed to the middle of 11th grade when kids take their SAT and they start hearing about seniors and applying to college. And that all of a sudden opens their eyes up to, whoa, this is a thing. What do I do? Unfortunately, in my experience, I found that what I call the high aspiration kids or the high potential kids, if they wait until they're a junior in high school, the middle of their junior year, and then they aspire to go to a Harvard or to a West Point, or they want to get an ROTC scholarship. Oftentimes the die has been cast and their body of work already speaks for itself, and they can't recover. They can't go back and get that leadership position. They can't go back and film that highlight reel. They can't go back and do the showcases. They can't go back and do a lot of the things in the summer internships, things that would put them in the position to really be successful in those highly selective programs. So it's a challenge, Anthony. I'll be honest with you. I happen to get on Shark Tank again with this PrepWell Academy business, and the Sharks brought up some very valid points. That isn't it challenging to get 9th and 10th graders to focus on something 2 or 3 years down the road when they're just trying to figure out high school. So that is an implicit challenge. It's also a challenge to convince parents of a student at 9th or 10th grade who might not be super excited about this to somehow manage their child's mentality or their mindset to start doing the blocking and tackling so that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, they're going to think, oh, wow, I'm glad I did X, Y, and Z. So I've decided that I'm going to do it anyway, even though it's a very difficult and challenging thing, because I have found over the last 4 or 5 years that I do find some students in 9th or 10th grade that they get it. The light bulb goes off. They want to be an athlete. They want to go to a military academy. They want to go to a very high or elite academic school or highly selective school. So we've had a growing following of people who, quote unquote, get it. I wish it was more of a majority, but it does take a lot for a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old to start doing it. And Anthony, these are not big things. These are not, hey, let's start studying for the SAT in 9th grade. These are small, methodical things that they should be thinking about, raising their awareness, just plugging away at things so that by the time 2 or 3 years go by, they can look back and say, wow, I'm sure glad I created a resume. I'm sure glad I did useful things over the summer. I'm sure glad I took challenging courses. I'm sure glad that I learned how to create good study habits and how to organize my computer. And so I'm basically their Uncle Phil who, in terms of how the process works, once they enroll, they get a video from me every Sunday where I give them a little tidbit. It's usually 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's not a big long lecture. It's not a whole college course. It's literally me like they're my child, like I do with my sons who are now seniors in high school. And I metaphorically tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, when you're a 9th grader, I know you're maybe not be thinking about these things down the road, but you should figure out this now. You should figure out your study habits and how to create a study environment that's going to be very conducive to learning. And this is what you should think about social media. And this is what you should start thinking about crafting a brand for yourself about what you might want to position yourself in down the road. Typically, the people who join my program fall into 4 different categories. The first category we call the pathway plan. That's for people who aren't super aspirational, meaning they don't have to go to Princeton, but they want to go to a good school. They want to be competitive. They don't want to just blow it all off, but they may not want to have the sophistication level of somebody who really wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. So that's the pathway plan. It's the baseline, the foundation plan. Then there's an athlete plan for athletes in 8th and 9th grade who feel like they want to use sports as leverage to get into college, whether that's through a scholarship or just like I did, using it as leverage just to get admitted to a school, because sports plays a pretty big role there. The third pathway is the military plan. That's for people who think they want to go to get an ROTC scholarship, or they want to go to West Point or the Naval Academy or the Coast Guard Academy. And then the last one is, we call it the Ivy plan, which is simply for people who want to get into I call it a top 20 school, schools that are difficult to get into. And if you're not planning and starting way ahead of time, it's probably going to be very difficult in the 11th hour to try to figure out a way to be successful.
So now, do you? So you're more of a consultant. Do you handle a lot of kids per year? Do you get kids from all over the globe coming to you? How does that work?
Yeah, typically it's domestic students from the country. We do have some people from Canada. We do have some people from overseas, but the program and the advice is based on the U.S. curriculum and based on when the SATs and ACTs. So we do have a smattering of people, because especially in the 9th and 10th grade, there is a lot of just general best practices of how to be a good student and how to be a disciplined student and how to get motivated. And then later on in 11th and 12th grade, it's a lot more US specific, domestic specific timing and things. So we have hundreds of people around across the country because I don't have to specifically have them as a one-on-one client. So it's very scalable. Anybody can join at any time. I actually don't allow people to enroll in 11th grade and 12th grade. It's just no longer open, even though the program extends all the way through 10th grade. That's my way of putting my money where my mouth is, because what I found is if I open it up, and I did this at the beginning years, if I open it up to 11th and 12th graders, everybody just procrastinates.
Sure.
And they follow me on social media and they follow my podcast, but they just don't ever flip the switch. And they're kind of half in and half out. So eventually I just said, listen, I have so much conviction that if you believe in what I'm saying, you have to enroll by sophomore year. Otherwise, it's almost wasted effort, because they do come to me in 11th grade. Oh, I wish I had enrolled, you should have like forced me to enroll or given me a ticking time bomb offer or something. So I don't really like using those tactics, but I just try to convince people, listen, if you can't bring yourself to believe that this information is valuable enough by the end of your sophomore year, then you're just on a different plan. You have a different philosophy. That's fine. I do have a small cadre of students that I work with in what I call my PrepWell private plan, a small group of students that I work with traditionally one-on-one. Like most college admissions counselors, they have a group of, say, depending on how intimate they get with their students, but they have maybe 20 or 30 or maybe even up to 50 cases, as we call them, and they try to juggle all those different students and give them advice. I keep my private students to no more than 10, because the kids that I work with, there's a lot going on. They want to go to a military academy, so they have to do extra interviews and fitness tests, or they want to be an athlete. So there's coaches and there's highlight reels and there's a whole nother, many more layers of things. So I can't carry 30 students with all of those different moving pieces. So I tend to get kids who are motivated. They want to do one of those three more heavy duty preparation plans. So I have the online program that's for everybody that can get all the advice all the time, 24/7. The parents get the advice as well. And then I have that small group of people who I work with one-on-one.
So now how do these students find you?
Typically word of mouth and online. We happen to be on Shark Tank, so that helps out quite a bit. It really raises your profile, and a lot of people come to the website by way of either the first airing, which was in April, right in the beginning of the pandemic. So actually the pandemic in a weird way helped us out quite a bit, because now a lot of people are working from home, and there's not quite as much of a leap to learn from someone over video. 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't as ubiquitous that people would be learning over the internet. It's like, well, is my son or daughter really going to listen to this person in a video? So now it's just everybody's doing video coaching. So this has been in a perverse way a boon to our business, just because this is very familiar to people now. Not only that, but a lot of kids are not going into school, and they're having a harder time connecting with their guidance counselor because they can't walk into the guidance counselor's office. So they're getting email newsletters, and they're getting their guidance counselor to put up a video every quarter. But sometimes instead of that, they'd rather have me talk to them every single week for 4 years than put all their hopes and dreams on the guidance counselor who's working from home.
Great. So, well, we're coming to the end of our show. And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents, the students that are watching this? What advice do you want to give them?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advice, and the thing that I hang my hat on in everything that I've done, whether it's getting into Yale or Shark Tank twice or whatever it might be, is preparation. That's why I named the business PrepWell Academy, because I'm trying to help you prepare well for the future. And if you start ahead of time, and for parents, try to do whatever you can to help your child believe that this early preparation, and use me as an example. Hey, I found out about this guy, Phil Black. He's not the smartest guy in the room. He doesn't come from a legacy of parents with a lot of money. He's a public school kid, and he's been able to do all of these things that some people would say, I'd love to do one of those things. Well, you too can do all of these things, but you have to start early. You have to start ahead and prepare and make sure you know what to expect, instead of figuring this stuff out later on and then regretting that you have to go back in time and try to rewrite history. So prepare early, prepare early, prepare early.
Well, great. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Phil. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. Best of luck.
Yeah, so you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.